everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. Last time we talked about how human migration and interaction have shaped civilizations. Today, we'll look at how other species have impacted global civilizations. Starting in 2020, the world faced a public health crisis triggered by the coronavirus, leading countries to implement various levels of quarantine measures. Speaking of quarantine, this word comes from the Italian quaranta, meaning the number 40. Why did the number 40 inches become synonymous with quarantine? This goes back to the Black Death that ravaged Europe in the 14th century. At that time, to prevent the spread of the Black Death, the Republic of Venice required all ships coming from infected areas to anchor at Venice's ports for 40 days before coming ashore. This measure was called 40 giorni, which means 40 days. Gradually, the word quaranta evolved to mean quarantine for infectious diseases. Not just humans, but animals, plants, and microbes that move with us also quietly influence the course of history. Their impact on civilization may be much greater than we imagine. Next, let's explore which species have influenced our history and civilizations through their interactions. Now let's talk about how plants spread across regions. Imagine, wild wheat first appeared on Earth about 500,000 years ago. But until 10,000 years ago, this plant was only found in a small area of the Turkish plateau and the Caucasus region. Back then, wild wheat was limited in quantity and not as common as it is today. This is because wild wheat has strict environmental requirements. It thrives only where Mediterranean and temperate continental climates meet. These regions have moist, unfrozen winters and dry, hot summers, which are not the most favorable conditions for crop growth. The life cycle of wild wheat typically begins with germination in the autumn or winter, followed by rapid growth and flowering in the spring. And then it dies in the heat of summer, leaving seeds dormant in the soil, waiting for the next cold season. This means that there cannot be too much rain in the summer, as it would cause the seeds to rot. There are few places in the world where the natural climate perfectly meets these conditions, which is why wild wheat was originally only found in certain parts of the Turkish plateau and the Caucasus. However, starting from 10,000 years ago, humans began to domesticate wild wheat, adapting it to a wider range of areas. For example, the natural conditions in North China are not suitable for wheat because the rainy and humid summers can cause the seeds to rot underground. But by farming, people harvest the wheat before summer, preventing the seeds from rotting. Thus, even in areas with more rainfall, wheat can be widely cultivated and propagated. Soon, wheat spread to Mesopotamia, the Mediterranean coast, and the northwestern and northern regions of China through human migration and interaction. As Europe, Asia, and North Africa are all in the Northern Hemisphere's habitable zone, despite differing climates, there is a commonality that allows high-yielding quality crops to spread rapidly across these regions. In addition to the widespread cultivation of wheat across the Eurasian continent, we are also familiar with crops like rice, as well as a variety of fruits and vegetables. The cultivation of these species has greatly enriched human food sources, thus significantly boosting population growth. We know that before the Industrial Revolution, the size of a civilization's population directly affected its level of civilization. In contrast, although the Americas have vast lands, the spread of species has not been as smooth as in Eurasia due to differences in latitude, which has also impacted the development of civilizations in the Americas to some extent. In modern history, one of the exchanges that changed the course of world history was the introduction of high-yielding crops like potatoes and corn from the Americas to the Eurasian continent. From 1700 to 1900, the population of the Eurasian continent surged from 530 million to 1.3 billion. Although different scholars may provide varying figures, the trend of population growth is clear. This rapid increase in population was largely due to the introduction of high-yielding crops, like potatoes. However, the spread of species is not one-directional. European immigrants not only brought crops from the Americas to the Eurasian continent, but also took many native Eurasian species, such as cotton, sugarcane, and coffee, to the Americas. The cultivation of these crops completely changed the local economic structures, making Latin America one of the world's top 3 coffee-producing regions. While the spread of plants is widespread, the dissemination of animals is equally important, and in some aspects, animals have had an even deeper impact on our world. Let's use the example of horse exchange to illustrate this point. The domestication and use of livestock power are indispensable parts of human civilization's development. On the Eurasian continent, livestock like pigs, cattle, and sheep are common, but the domestication of horses is a special case. Although wild horses existed in Europe, Asia, and Africa, scientific studies on the genetics of modern domestic horses' ancestors reveal that they actually originated from the Central Asian Plateau in the Caucasus region. In this area, archaeologists often find remains of young horses, indicating that early humans may have primarily raised horses for their meat. However, soon after, due to their large size, strength, and speed, horses quickly became favorites among the nomadic tribes of the Central Asian Plateau. They were widely domesticated for their power, assisting humans in farming, transportation, and building. As the ancient Indo-Europeans migrated and spread across the Eurasian continent, horses were brought to regions like Mesopotamia, the Iranian Plateau, India, and the Mediterranean coast, becoming common species across Eurasia. Initially, horses were used to pull carts, not for riding, as the necessary riding gear had not yet been invented. Around 3500 BC, the Sumerians living in Mesopotamia invented the wheel and subsequently developed horse-drawn chariots. With the advent of the chariot, not only were long-distance communication and trade activities made possible, but the combination of large horses and lightweight vehicles also completely changed the ancient warfare dominated by infantry. In 1274 BC, a significant battle known as the Battle of Kadesh took place, involving 2 of the most advanced civilizations at the time, the ancient Egyptian civilization and the Hittite civilization from Mesopotamia. At that time, the great Egyptian leader Ramses II led his army, traveling 500 kilometers to reach Kadesh on the Orontes River, in what is now Syria. Such a long march would have been impossible without a large number of horses. In that battle, both sides used a total of 5,000 horse-drawn chariots, showing that the use of horses was very common at that time. By the 4th century, the Chinese had invented the solid stirrup, which greatly enhanced the combat effectiveness of cavalry. In the expansions of the Arab Empire and the Mongol Empire that followed, cavalry, with its mobility, replaced infantry as the decisive force on the battlefield. Before the information age, the advancement of a civilization largely depended on the total amount of power resources it could mobilize. Before the Industrial Revolution, the power provided by large livestock, such as horses and cattle, was a key factor supporting the progress of civilizations across the Eurasian continent. In the Americas, although wild horses once existed, they had become extinct due to climate change or overhunting long before Europeans arrived. Thus, The absence of large domestic animals for power was a significant reason for the slower development of civilizations in the Americas. With the arrival of Europeans, horses were reintroduced to the Americas and widely propagated across the New World. The reintroduction of horses completely changed the lifestyle of the Native Americans in North America. From primarily farming and supplementary hunting communities, they transformed into horse-riding nations, relying on hunting large mammals such as bison, deer, and elk for their livelihood. Until the widespread use of the steam engine, horses remained the main means of transportation and source of power on the American continent. Finally, let's discuss the global spread of microbes. Microbes, though difficult to observe directly, can cause infectious diseases and epidemics with devastating power, enough to threaten the survival of entire civilizations. Take the Black Death in 14th century Europe as an example. This plague almost pushed the entire European civilization to the brink of extinction. How did the Black Death suddenly erupt in Europe? The common view is that the Black Death originated from the plague in the Mongol region and was brought to Europe due to intense population movements between the East and the West at the time. Since Europeans had no immunity to this disease, the plague spread rapidly throughout Europe, leading to the death of about 1/3 of the European population. The death of a large number of young adults led to a sharp decrease in the rural workforce, a shortage of labor on feudal estates, and the instability of the manorial system. After the ordeal of the Black Death, many European countries were reborn from the ruins, beginning a transition to modern societies and commercial economies, which laid the groundwork for the later rise and global dominance of Western Europe. Therefore, some believe that the Black Death actually helped to shape modern Western civilization. In addition to the Black Death, another disease that had a huge impact on the global population was smallpox, measles, malaria, diphtheria, and cholera, brought to the Americas by European colonizers. These diseases also led to significant population reductions, reshaping the population and social structures of the New World. Taking North America as an example, there has always been academic debate about the population numbers of the indigenous peoples, but most scholars now agree that the number was between 50 million and 100 million. However, since the arrival of European colonizers in North America, the population of the indigenous peoples drastically reduced to less than 10 million. Some scholars even suggest that this sharp decrease in the indigenous population led to large areas of farmland being abandoned, allowing forests and grasslands to expand, which may have contributed to a reduction in atmospheric carbon dioxide, potentially triggering what is called the Little Ice Age. Although this view might seem a bit far-fetched, the impact of microbial spread on the history of the Americas cannot be ignored. To summarize, today's discussion started with the concept of quarantine and showed the profound impact of the exchange of other species on civilizations. From the spread and cultivation of crops like wheat and rice, which greatly enriched early human food sources, to the use of horses, which not only changed the methods of production and transportation, but also reshaped the nature of warfare. The global movement of microbes might be inconspicuous, but the power of pathogens and viruses is enough to destroy civilizations. As humans migrate and move, the global circulation of plants, animals, and microbes is quietly changing the trajectory of world civilizations, and their impact far exceeds that of any individual or decision on the process of world civilization. In the next talk, we will turn to human society, discussing how the spread and exchange of religious cultures have impacted world civilization. All right, that's it for today's podcast. Thank you all for listening and for your support. If you liked today's content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next episode.